Plin catches the wind. Once upon a time, a mother called her young son into the kitchen and gave him a lunchbox with the queen of the grains, baked buckwheat honey cakes, and tea. This he carried with him to the forest where his father was woodcutting. Plin, who was now 10 years of age, happily obeyed his mother with pride. Putting on his warm wool coat, he slapped on his red cap and stepped forth on the forest path that led to where his father was splitting wood for winter. It was a bright autumn morning. The trees, whose tangled branches waited for the coming and going of the fall winds to scatter their yellow, green, and red leaves, stood as still as the stars in a night sky. Plin walked along, whistling, stretching his arms high and wide in the crisp fall air. He imagined himself to be a winged god in a golden chariot, charging into an approaching storm. Suddenly, on the forest path, where fall crocuses crouched, an unseen wind, which had collected with unusual enthusiasm the decaying leaves, drove him into Plin's face, like a wild spirit moving everywhere at once. They spread an uneasy chill around Plin's hands and feet, a sound like the torrent of a mountain river deafened Plin until he trembled and fell under the spell of a cloud-filled sky. The woods oozed. The sleep of night floated upward, trailing Plin to its starry bed. Now, it's right to know that between the time of autumn winds and the time of winter snow, where nothing is but all things seem, over the dreaming earth, a small mischievous wind whirled up with all her might, unleashing and emptying thunder showers of their rain, blasting southern birds and beasts, yes, even the earthworms, with stolen frigid bites from the Arctic zone, and shrieked so loudly that even the good angel of lightning and cloud strained under her baneful surge. Now, it's not unusual between the time of the fall winds and winter snows that youngster winds or whippets wander to test their strength against the four great winds of time. But unknown to the small whippet, who we will name Lilliputian, or Lily for short, the great north sylph wind named Boreas had settled into a well-deserved interval of rest. Calm and dampened down, his robust temper was eased, his cold breath hushed, as silent as a cat's paw breeze at sea. Suddenly, into this peaceful gap, a sound entered. At first, a tinkle, then a clattering clank, then finally a roar whacked right through Boreas's slumber. He woke up. Also troubled by the commotion was the south sylph wind, Sodus. She streamed toward Boreas from the heights to find out what was causing the trees to shake and the birds to blast right out of their nests. It didn't take the two great sylph winds long to discover the cause, for where and when there had been the music of songbird, now only a stony silence reached over the realm. There were no birds to be seen or heard anywhere. Boreas, The oldest and wisest of the great sylph winds knew that all winds, whether they be puffs of air or great gales, depended on the bird world. Seeing the birds moving and weaving through the air set in motion vibrations of light and love, which the sylph winds breathed in and out to every plant, animal, and person on earth. In turn, the sylph winds inspired the birds to sing. Without the birds, the sylph winds felt very lost. Without the sylph winds, the birds lost their heavenly songs. With great concern, Boreas beheld the stony silence of the bird kingdom, sending out a question into the heavenly spheres, and urgently awaited an answer. Yago-Yo was busy working with the root folk when Boreas's question reached her in the form of a great rock crystal, who simply landed beside her in a lump and whispered Boreas's question. Who could do the great fine deed of catching the rogue wind called Lily to restore the bird world to the sylph winds? It was by the grace of the angels and Yago-Yo, who then gathered together all the lost sounds and movements of the bird world and all the wishes of love from the sylph world, that Plin finally understood the great fine deed that he must do. He must catch Lily, the mischievous young whippet, whose piercing breath had blasted the birds from their nests and blocked the sylph winds. Yago-Yo carried Plin higher and higher into the starry realms until he could see the circling and weaving light of the sylphs. Everywhere, fire spirits, who looked like tiny winged men, piloting pocket-sized airships of light and flame, darted here and there in the plant world, from dried seedbud to dried seedbud. They united delightfully with the radiance shimmering inside the sylph winds to warm the plants in preparation for their winter sleep. Plin gasped. Suddenly, a bluish, blackish shade bewitched the sylph winds into a grave stillness. Something had enchanted the bird world, making its heavenly song unable to reach the sylphs. So much so that the sylphs felt empty and lost. Plin also saw that the bird world could not sing. Sylphs could not waft and weave cosmic light, and the fire spirits could not send their warmth to the plant world. Everywhere the world of nature was in peril. Come springtime, plant roots would not be nourished, leaves would not develop, and beautiful flower blossoms would not unfold. Meanwhile, Lily pushed her way towards the last place where the sylph winds, who had narrowly escaped her grasp, were busy gathering up light from very fine currents of air and warmth. A small flock of swallows, released by the angels, set out to help rescue the sylph winds and fire spirits. The sylphs could hear the heavenly bird song approaching, but would the swallows reach them in time? Plin gazed deeply into the sylph wind. What was he looking for? Plin watched helplessly as the bad fire spirits and sylphs filtered down from the skies so low toward the earth that they carried their evil natures into young whippets like Lily, making even the forces of gravity take hold of the bird world, freezing the air with a bluish black, causing all kinds of chaos and confusion. Plin was troubled. He couldn't answer the riddle. Can evil be changed back to good? Yago heard Plin's lament and instilled into his thoughts, "It is known, young Plin, that since ancient times the old mystery schools taught that what has been built up wrongly can change back from evil to good, providing the help is done with the aid of higher angels." That was exactly what Plin was looking for. He knew now that inside every self-whippet lived a mighty archangel. Lily was too young to know that an exalted being lived inside her rushing wind and fire. But how was Plin to reach the archangel inside the flaming fire and roaring winds of the young whippet? Plin watched carefully as Lily plunged, weaving and descending ever faster toward the small group of swallows and their companions, the sylph winds. It seemed as if nothing could stop her. Plin reached deeply into his dreaming thoughts. He imagined his thoughts flying like microscopic comets into the flaming fire and roaring winds surrounding the archangel. And into this glittering and shimmering he poured his whole heart. An instant feeling of longing absorbed the archangel, and he turned his gaze toward Plin. And through Plin's determination to complete his great fine deed and save the sylvan bird worlds, the spiritual eye of the archangel read his innermost thoughts. Then Plin saw a very strange thing indeed. A great upflashing of greenish red lightning separated itself from the shimmering gold of the good selves and fire spirits. The lightning was then carried away into the darkest regions of the night sky. In accordance with the law of the heavens, there is a special place in the cosmos where bad selves and fire spirits could strive, with the help of angels, to become good-natured. And so, Lily, the youngster whippet wind, broke the bluish-blackish enchantment that had frozen the bird and sylph worlds. Soon the sylphs were once again flying on the wings of the bird world, inspiring their heavenly song and carrying the fire spirits and their warmth to the plant world for the spring awakening. Boreas, too, fell back into his calm slumber, and Sodus was able to guide these southern bird migrations again. As for Plin, he woke up when a tiny soft wind tickled his cheek. The sun was still high in the sky. Picking up his lunchbox as he steps once again on the forest path, he glances backward and senses a small breeze wafting and weaving around him. He smiles contentedly and continues on his way. The young Plin once again learned that even though most would not believe it, that every great fine deed is brought about with the aid of heavenly angels. During this winter season, on a cold, clear, dark, starry night, go outside and with admiration study the heavens. With your secret eye, draw your attention to the many stars and planets. Gaze with your whole heart. You may see the planet Venus with its flaming fire spirits, and Mercury with its roaring winds. And if you look very, very closely, with all the love you can hold in your heart, you may see an archangel gazing down at you because he knows that you are becoming the love that will someday do the great fine deed of creating an earth made up of freedom and love.